The reason I mentioned Father's Day is because this next question that I want to ask you this morning is probably more pertaining to fathers than it is to mothers. So dads out there, how many of you, when your children were real little, did you used to like to kind of throw them up in the air and catch them? Be honest. Oh, thank you, I'm not alone. I am not alone. Did you ever drop them? Did you ever do it with somebody else's kid? I think I did it with like nieces and nephews or cousins. I don't think I ever did it with somebody who wasn't family related. There was an old comedy sketch years ago, and when I say years ago, it was, I think Johnny Carson was still the host of the Tonight Show, and the late George Carlin was on there, and he was pantomiming this very experience of taking the child and throwing him up in the air and catching him. And as he's doing it, each time he's throwing him higher and it's waiting a little longer, and each time catching him until the one time he goes in and he drops the child. He turns to his sister and says, "Sorry, Margaret, I lost him in the sun." Hope you never throw him that high and you have that kind of problem. I was thinking about that today. And I was thinking, why do we do that with our children? Are we trying to scare them to death, as some would argue? I would argue that really what we're trying to teach a child in doing that is to trust their father to catch them. Sometimes we feel like God maybe has kind of tossed us up in the air and we're like, I'm hoping there's somebody down there to catch us as we're falling and screaming sometimes. In John chapter 6 verse 29, Jesus declared, the work God wants you to do is this: believe the one He sent. Believe the one He sent. Everything begins with faith. Everything begins with trust. The absence of faith will result in years of wandering in the wilderness. The presence of faith will result in promised land living. It's really that simple. It was for Joshua. I mean, he wasn't tossed up into the air, but he trusted God to open rivers, to collapse strongholds, and to pry the devil's fingers off of his inheritance. Joshua trusted God. Most of the children of Israel followed his example, but one man refused. His name was Achan. Now, if you've never heard of this man before, you're probably not alone. Because when it comes to scriptures, we tend to gravitate towards happier Bible stories. I mean, we love Peter's redemption when God restores him along the seashore that day. We love Saul's conversion, who had been a persecutor of Christians, and God intervenes on the road to Damascus and calls him to be basically the missionary to the Gentiles. We love Samson's, restoration. And all of these great stories, David, and Goliath, and Daniel and the lions, but Achan's corruption, we don't sing very many Sunday school songs about that. And rightly so. And yet, his story survived the final edits of the book of Joshua. God kept it there for a reason. It's not a very happy story. It's not a fun story to read. So you might brace yourself for a very solemn warning to all of us. Chapter 6, that we looked at last week, ended on such a high note. Verse 27 said, so the Lord was with Joshua. I mean, last week we marched around Jericho. We saw the walls come tumbling down, not because of anything that the people did other than their obedience to do it the way God said to do it. But God was the one that brought about that incredible victory. No rock, no enemy was left standing. The stage was set for the Hebrews to run the table. The citadel of Jericho was in shambles. The word was out. The Hebrew children were emboldened. Joshua's face was on the evening news. So the Lord was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout all the country. Just let that sink in for a little bit. The Lord was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout the entire country. All of these people were shaking in their boots. They were scared to death. They had already heard what had happened on the other side of the Jordan River with the kings of Og, King Og and King Bashan. I mean, they were wiping out everybody that came up against them. They crossed the Jordan River at flood stage, when God parted the waters, when the priest stepped into the water, when the presence of God, you might say, stepped into the water and the waters parted. I mean, all of these incredible things God is doing on behalf of Joshua because of his obedience. So God, the Lord, was with Joshua. You know, so is such a great word. Sadly, however, the so in chapter 6 becomes a but in chapter 7, verse 1. But Israel violated the instructions about the things set apart to the Lord. A man named Achan had stolen some of these dedicated things, so the Lord was very angry with the Israelites. Here's what we know about Achan. He had a wife. He had children, a family. He had oxen, donkeys, sheep, and a tent. He had a place in the bloodline of Judah, and most of all, he blatantly and deliberately violated God's command in Joshua chapter 6, verses 18 and 19. Before they took the city of Jericho, God gave these instructions to the children of Israel. Do not take any of the things set apart for destruction, or you yourselves will be completely destroyed, and you will bring trouble on the camp of Israel. Everything made of silver, gold, bronze, or iron is sacred to the Lord and must be brought into his treasury. That was the command. Very straightforward. Very simple. You see anything valuable? Bring it to me. Don't touch the stuff. Don't make necklaces out of the gold. Don't make medals out of the bronze. Don't pick up any trinkets. No souvenirs. No Jericho jewelry. No kidding. God had such incredible high hopes for the children of Israel. I mean, through them, all of the Scripture, the Bible as we know it, would be written through them. The prophets would come through them. The Messiah would descend through them. God needed them to trust Him and Him alone. Were they to rely on their own strength? No. Were they to rely on their own resources? No. Were they to rely on their own ability? Absolutely not. God is enough. Hasn't that been the message of Joshua throughout? Who opened the Jordan River? God. Who led the people across on dry ground through the Jordan River? You might say the priest, but ultimately it was God. Who showed up one night to encourage Joshua? God did. Remember? It wasn't an angel, as we may have thought, but Christ Himself. Who brought down the walls of Jericho? God. Who fought for and delivered the people? God. He cared for His people. There's a theme here. You're catching on. Even in the wilderness, they never went without provision. They may have gotten tired of the manna nut bread, but beyond that, they never were hungry. The old song by Keith Green, banana waffles, banana bagels, banana hotcakes, whatever. He gave them not just food, but clothing, good health. Just before they entered the promised land, Moses reminded the Hebrew children, he said in Deuteronomy 8:4, your clothes did not wear out, and your feet did not swell during these 40 years. Now I must confess, I still have some shirts that are over 20 years old, but 40? I mean, God echoed that message to them in Deuteronomy 29:5. He said, during the 40 years that I led you through the wilderness, your clothes did not wear out, nor did the sandals on your feet. Now, think about that. 40 years. Same shoes. 40 years, the same clothes. For 40 years, you never heard these phrases in the wilderness. Boy, I sure need to go soak my feet in Epsom salts tonight. Oh, bummer, my robe has another tear in it. Hey, new sandals, where'd you get them? I mean, it's crazy. Poor tailors and cobblers, they were out of work for 40 years. I mean, no want for food, no want for clothing, never blister or abundant, God provided for them. But God promised to provide even more. Again, quoting from Moses in Deuteronomy 8, 7 through 9, he says, "For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land with brooks, streams, and deep springs gushing out into the valleys and hills. A land where wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil, and honey. A land where bread will not be scarce and you will lack nothing. A land where the rocks are iron and you can dig copper out of the hills." Wow. Natural resources can go, just for the taking.
Right.
In God's promised land society, He was the sole source of blessing. God alone. He knew what would happen if these soldiers who were charging the broken down walls of Jericho, if they began to hoard treasure. They would stop trusting in Him and start trusting in their stuff. Think about that. These people were simple, hayseed veterans at best. You see, almost every one of them had been conceived and born in their 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. That's the only life they had known. Hebrews in Jericho were like gypsies on Rodeo Drive. The gold would bedazzle them. The bracelets and rings would entrance them. The shekels, the jewelry, the silver, the silk, the gold. Hebrews were ill-prepared to own such finery. Achan proved the point. He saw the bling and forgot the king. And God's discipline was immediate and severe. You see, just a few miles north of Jericho, there was a little town, about 12,000 people, called Ai. Joshua circled the name of the city on his wall map and told his officers to attack. I mean, after this incredible victory at Jericho, where they didn't even have to lift a finger, he assumed this small town would be easy pickings. 12,000 people? I mean, Joshua had more soldiers than that on his night watch. So he just sent a reduced battalion of about 3,000 soldiers, figuring, if God can bring down the walls of Jericho without even having to lift a sword, what's 12,000 people in a little town up the road here? Well, Joshua was in for a surprise because that town was a kennel of pit bulls, and the people of Ai bit back. And Joshua's division raced home discouraged, disheveled, and licking their wounds. In fact, it says in Joshua 7, verses 4 and 5, that the men of Ai chased the Israelites from the town gate as far as the quarries, and they killed 36 who were retreating down the slope. The Israelites became paralyzed with fear at this turn of events, and their courage melted away. The previous generation had seen the plagues that got them out of Egypt, yet they still doubted God. This generation had seen the Jordan River open up. They had seen the walls of Jericho fall, and then in this one defeat they lose all courage, and they were in despair. Joshua's mighty men crawled beneath their blankets and trembled. He didn't know what to think. I mean, after all of these victories, they had been undefeated. They were undaunted, and undeniably they were the new force in the land of Canaan that were being talked about all over the place. And Joshua, what does he do? What would you do? He has a meltdown. He does. He tears his clothes, he falls on his face, and he starts praying like the Hebrews in the wilderness days. He regretted the invasion. He accuses God of setting them up for certain defeat. He says, "Oh, that we had been content and dwelt on the other side of the Jordan. Why did you even bring us into this promised land, God, if this is what it's going to amount to?" Joshua came undone, but God was not done. I love God's response. Verse 10, the Lord said to Joshua, "Get up! Why are you lying on your face like this?" So he pulls himself to his feet. God tells him, the reason you guys are messing up, the reason that 36 of you were killed is because there is trouble in the camp. Verse 11, Israel has sinned and broken my covenant. They have stolen some of the things that I commanded that must be set apart for me. And they have not only stolen them, but they have lied about it and have hidden the things among their own belongings. That is why the Israelites are running from their enemies in defeat. Deception. Disobedience. Now you got problems. It's not that the people of Ai were that formidable. It's more that the Hebrew camp was poisoned. God told Joshua in so many words to find the rotten apple before it ruined the whole bushel. So at God's direction, Joshua goes through a systematic search. Tribe by tribe. Family by family. And then man by man. Until Achan confesses. And tells about the treasures that are hidden in his tent. Verse 20. Chapter 7. Achan says, I have sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel. Among the plunder, I saw a beautiful robe from Babylon, 200 silver coins, and a bar of gold weighing more than a pound. I wanted them so much that I took them. They are hidden in the ground beneath my tent, with the silver buried deeper than the rest. Now, without too much imagination, it's not very difficult to recreate Achan's stumble. I mean, as they charge into the city to annihilate the people that they've been commanded to kill, along with the other soldiers, he had walked through this fallen city. There's rubble everywhere. The conquest is complete. And all the spoils of Jericho are just lying about on the ground, unprotected. There's gold, coins, beautiful garments. Everyone saw the stuff. Everyone else remembered God's command. They saw the treasures and kept going. But Achan, when he thought no one was looking, he looks first to the left, he looks to the right. Sure no one sees him. He sees this beautiful robe from Babylon. He sees these silver coins and this bar of gold. And he said, I wanted them so much that I took them. I saw. I wanted. I took. There could be a whole sermon right there on temptation. Goodness. Others saw. I'm sure others wanted. But only Achan took. Why? Was he just wanting a payoff? Maybe some money to fall back on in case the Hebrews lost someday? Maybe it was to pat a nest egg. I mean, that'd be kind of nice. Or to have something for negotiating in case he was ever taken captive. Whatever the explanation is, Achan didn't trust God. He didn't trust God's wisdom. He didn't trust God's ability to provide or protect. So he broke the pre-invasion oath that he and all the others had made. This was the indictment that God gave. He has transgressed the covenant of the Lord. I'm convinced that Achan had to have been among those same people who had pledged all the way back in chapter 1, verse 18, when they said, whoever rebels against your word, Joshua, and does not obey it, whatever you may command them, they will be put to death. Achan took matters into his own hands. More literally, he took treasure into his own tent. But the problem is, it wasn't just him. He entangled his whole family in this deception. For they knew as well. The judgment that God poured out was swift, and the punishment was stiff. Achan and his entire family were publicly executed. All of their possessions were burned. And a monument was built as a warning to the people. It was a very solemn and somber day in Gilgal. And it's also a solemn warning to us as well. God is a jealous God. He is jealous for our trust. He doesn't request it. He doesn't suggest it. He doesn't recommend it. He demands it. His unvarnished message is clear. Trust me and me alone. There's a similar story that happens in the New Testament. The church had just begun. It was in the height of its glory days. Miracles, sermons, baptism, exponential growth. The book of Acts is all good fruit and fanfare until chapter 5. That's when Ananias and Sapphira entered the scene. You see, like Achan, this couple, this husband and wife, stole something that belonged to God. They had pledged to sell some property and to give the proceeds from that sale to the Lord. However, they chose to keep some of the money back for themselves and yet claim that what they gave to the church was the amount that they had received for it. Like Achan, they lied. Like Achan, they died. It says in Acts 5:11 that their bodies were carried out and great fear gripped the entire church. On this topic of faith, God is serious. Dead serious. Achan and Gilgal, Ananias and Sapphira in Jerusalem. Their graves remind us to be careful. What would a search of your tent reveal? What would a search of your home reveal? A cabinet full of faith? Or a closet piled with ambition? A pantry of hope? Or a storage bin of stock certificates? Where do you put your trust? For our own sakes, the story of Achan reminds us to not put our trust in stuff. Sleep. I like the illustration, you'll never see a hearse pulling a U-Haul. Paul told Timothy, 1 Timothy 6:17, he said, "Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment." Now you're probably sitting there thinking, well, I'm not rich. He said the rich in this world, guess what? That is you and me. If you have enough resources to own your own Bible, if you have enough education to be able to read that Bible, you are rich by the world's standards. You likely qualify as a prosperous person. And that's okay. Because prosperity is a common consequence of faithfulness, according to Proverbs 22:4. Paul didn't tell the rich to feel guilty about being rich. He just urged caution. Nothing breeds failure like success. Money is just a short-term condition. The abundance or the lack of money, guess what? That's only going to be felt for one life. That's it. Don't get tangled up in it. Didn't know this was going to be a sermon about giving, did you? Maybe not. But certainly where our priorities are, where our trust is placed. In closing, I want you to imagine with me, for just a moment, that you are living in the Deep South during the Civil War. We've got to go back 150 years or so. And you have amassed for yourself a ton of Confederate currency. But through a chain of events, you begin to realize that the battles aren't exactly going your way, and you start to realize that, you know, this currency is soon going to be absolutely worthless. What would you do? Now, if you have some common sense, which I believe all of you do, you would probably start trying to unload your Southern currency and putting every penny you could into the currency that is to come and to prepare yourself for the end of the war. Guess what? Our currency isn't so great anymore. Are we investing in the currency of heaven? The one thing that is secure. The one thing that will last. The world economy is going down. Our wallet is full of soon-to-be useless paper. The currency of this world will be worth nothing when you die and when Christ returns. Both of which could happen at any moment. If you and I start stockpiling earthly treasures instead of heavenly treasures, What does that say about where we put our trust? Glory days happen to the degree that we trust in God. So whom do you trust? Do you trust in God? Or do you trust the treasures of this world? The ruler of this age, of this world, is never satisfied. The resources that he promised will rust, they will rot, they will lose their value, they will go out of style. For all the promises he makes, he cannot keep a single one. He will always break our promise. The King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. Every time life feels uncertain, as though we've just been tossed up in the air, he will catch us every single time. Where's your trust? What possessions do you rely on most in your life? What would be the most difficult things to live without? And one of the things, moving to this part of the country, it seems like every night almost on the news, there's some story related to homeless people. I'm thinking, how would I survive without a roof over my head? A vehicle to get around it. What part of your life do you have the most difficulty in trusting to God? What part of your life do you find it most difficult to entrust to God? Career? Family? Your friendships? How about your money? How do you remind yourself that you can trust God? What do you do? What do you do to remind yourself that you can trust God? This kind of relates back to our Sunday school class this morning as Joe was leading us through Psalm 27. And there was this idea, where do you look, in God? I mean, what attributes do you equate to God? Where have you seen Him work in the past? How do you remind yourself that you can trust God? Are there scriptures that encourage you to trust God in those times when it seems like your world might be falling apart around you? When you feel like maybe you've been tossed in the air one too many times? When have you failed to trust God? What did you learn from those experiences? What do you think about those things? It's so easy. It's so easy to fall into the world's standard of putting our trust in stuff, the almighty dollar, when the only thing that will last for eternity are the things that we invest in heaven. Store up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where moth and rust, moth do not come in need, rust doesn't decay. I mean, it's those things that are beyond physical realm that last. Something to think about. Let's pray.